Hi, I'm Susannah Kenton. I'm a voice artist and I specialize in what's called a mid-Atlantic accent. And a few people who watched a previous video that I made on YouTube asked me to do a tutorial. And at first I thought, how would I do that with people that have all different accents starting out? And how would I be able to correct them or fix things? And then it occurred to me that there might be a way to do it. So this is my attempt to do that. So what I want you to do is decide first off whether your accent is more British or more American as a base. And if English is your second language and let's say you're Asian, just see which of those two it seems to fall into more. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the same piece of copy 3 times. So I'm going to read it first with a British accent, and those of you who have an American base, you'll need to lean into that and practice that and imitate those vowel sounds and that way of speaking. And then those of you that have, second time I'll read it with an American accent, and those of you that have a more British base, that will be the one for you to lean into. And then finally, I'll read it in a blend of the two accents, and you can feel your way into that. And afterwards, we'll speak a little bit more about how to do it and what it's made up of. So the piece of copy that I've chosen is a poem called The Guest House by Rumi. I'm going to read it slowly, and I'd love you to just kind of, if you can, pull up a copy of it on the internet. The Guest House by Rumi, R-U-M-I. Okay, first with a British accent. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. So before I read it with an American accent, I just want to point out a couple of things that are quite British. For instance, instead of saying new, which is American, you would say new. Sorrow, that vowel sound is very British, sorrow. Honorably, that's the same vowel sound. And notice also that with a British accent, you pronounce quite strongly the T's. So let me find an example. Okay, entertain, entertain. Okay, now let's do it with the American accent. And those of you that are fully American, you can be the judge of whether my accent actually sounds like yours or not. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows. That sounded Canadian. Sorrows, who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. Notice delight. We don't, with the British accent, you'd say delight. And with more of an American accent, the T is oftentimes more like a D, like delight. Honorably instead of honorably. Sorrow instead of sorrow. Yeah, so the 3 things to notice the difference between when you're starting from an American base and wanting to go towards a British base is to pay attention to the R sound, which is dropped. So let's see, awareness, awareness. Instead of saying awareness, you say awareness, like the R isn't even there, and the T and D, as I've mentioned. And then the different vowels, which I've also pointed out. Okay, now let's have a go at the Mid-Atlantic one. And what I want you to do is just follow along with it and feel your way into it. So we're going to combine a little bit of each of them. So this being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. I don't know how that is on your end, but I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the Mid-Atlantic accent, because there's this stereotypical idea of what it is that comes from kind of old Hollywood movies from the 40s, people like Katharine Hepburn. And these people were taught to speak. They were people usually with an American base who were taught to speak through elocution lessons to sound correct. So it was British, a more British sound was quite esteemed. And so they were taught to really enunciate clearly and talk in this accent that was actually made up. It was kind of artificial. There is not a place called Mid-Atlantia. It doesn't exist. And when we speak about Mid-Atlantic today, though, it's kind of different, and especially in the voiceover world. What it is it's a blend of British with American that is soft on the ear and ironically doesn't sound artificial or synthetic or made up, because in voiceover usually, unless you're doing something very, very specific, the trend is towards sounding very authentic, speaking in a way that sounds natural, where you're not faking something, that people want to hear and feel the real human being behind the voice. I've coached a couple of people recently who wanted to learn a Mid-Atlantic accent. One was a wonderful lady from Malaysia who spoke English better than I do. And she just wanted to have an accent that she felt represented who she is, more than the way that she spoke when she would be identified as Asian, or I don't know, whatever people were projecting onto her. Another person I taught was an African-American actor who was playing a role where he was a prince, and he had to have a sound that sounded more regal, more aristocratic. And what was interesting in both cases was that each person actually discovered in the Mid-Atlantic accent kind of a freedom to express themselves beyond what they had been able to do in their natural accent. Because the beauty of the Mid-Atlantic accent is that there isn't a right and wrong way to do it. It is a blend of two accents. And so there's freedom within that. And what I would love you to try to practice, maybe read the poem again, is to find your comfort in it. So when an American starts to speak with a British accent, at first it sounds very awkward and kind of put on. But when you soften a bit on that and own, let's say, the British flavor, and allow yourself to speak with that, but let your own accent bleed through, then you come into something that often is really beautiful and sounds authentic and doesn't have that artificial kind of put on sound. Does that make sense? Anyway, I'd love to hear how you get on. And I wish I could listen to your voice samples. I'm sure they're going to be amazing, but thanks for listening, and to be continued.